Happy Friday, hibbity-dibbity.com. It's the best day of the week. Well, maybe Saturday is, but at least when you hit 5 o'clock on Friday, you know that's the furthest away from work on Monday you're going to be. So enjoy it. And in 8 hours or so, or whenever it is from now, even though I may post this later, that's where I'm at right now, just before I leave for work. That will be a great time in my day. But anyways, I got a bunch of stuff done lately. I've been really busy around the house with the fall, cleaning up the yard and stuff like that. And then my son's theater group, I've been building props for that. So that keeps me super busy. So I just realized, I've got a lot of stuff done lately that I need to report on. So let's get going. First thing, a bunch of books to start. First one, my parents got me this recently for birthday or something, I don't remember. But it's called Dark Matter. And it takes place in Chicago. It's a scientist named Jason Dessen who has he's got a wife named Daniela and a 14 or 15-year-old son named Charlie. And he used to be doing pursuing groundbreaking research. And when his wife got pregnant, they both kind of gave up their passions. So he's teaching at like a second-rate college. She was an aspiring artist, and now she kind of works from home as a graphic designer or something, or something freelance. I don't remember, but anyways, life isn't how they dreamed it would work out, even though they're both happy with their family and stuff. So his research was in the realm of, I don't know how science works on this, but like the multiverse, where there's, for every choice you make, there's a parallel universe running simultaneously next to the one that you're in, where you made this choice and this choice and this choice, and every time you make a choice it branches and branches and branches. So there's like billions of possible universes, right? And so one night he is cooking dinner for his family, and a friend of his, Ryan, who recently won an award for his breakthroughs in science, is having a celebration at their local pub. So he doesn't want to go, Jason doesn't want to go, but his wife kind of forces him and says, just go for a bit and pop in. He goes, Ryan starts to bother him, so he leaves, and then on his walk back home, he gets abducted by a man wearing a mask, and this guy makes him drive out to this abandoned kind of factory or warehouse or something. And before he knows it, he's been injected with some sort of drug. And when he wakes up, he's surrounded in this room by a bunch of people who are congratulating him and welcoming him back from his trip. And so he's like, what? I don't know who any of you are. Where am I? Last I heard, I thought I was walking home and getting ice cream on my way back home from the bar. And so he escapes from these people in this facility and goes about trying to figure out what's happened to him. And I don't want to spoil it, but it basically relates to his research of accessing the multiverse and stuff like that. And he's led on this grand adventure and has to find a way back home, sort of thing. So I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's a really neat book with some neat ideas. And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was. So that's the first book. The next one is the fifth and final entry in the Magisterium series called The Golden Tower. In this, as the story starts up, Cal is going back to the Magisterium for his last year of schooling. After the big fight that ended with Master Joseph's death, and Alex Strike killed Cal's best friend Aaron, he's worried about how he's going to be perceived at school, because it's never been great to begin with, since he's been thought to be the enemy of death, even though he's not. So when he gets back, of course, people are talking about him and stuff, but he's pleasantly surprised that his best friend Tamara is super welcoming and is happy to see him, as is his master at the Magisterium, Master Rufus. So he gets back to kind of the way things are, but soon enough, Alex Strike shows up on the back of a elemental dragon and demands that the mages build him a golden tower on the grounds of the Magisterium, or else. So they set about doing this, and in the meantime, Cal and his friends have a few days to kind of find a way to come up with a way of stopping Alex, who has become a devoured of chaos. So they do some research with some other devoureds who are imprisoned at the Magisterium, and they find out that if they gather 4 elementals, or 4 devoureds, all of the 4 different elements. They can combine to make a devoured undevoured, which may or may not kill that person. So they go about recruiting these 4 devoureds, and they've already got fire on their side because Tamara's sister Raven is a devoured of fire, but then they have to go find the other 3. So it's kind of this road trip to find an element of, or a devoured of earth and water, was it? Yeah. And then Cal's father Alistair goes in search of the devoured of air. And so then they have to find these devoureds and then find a way to kind of not sneak into the tower because Alex is going to take them prisoner, but find a way to enact the plan within the tower when they're imprisoned by Alex, and get the devoureds there and go about attacking Alex and bringing him, taking him down. So, and then the whole other thing that's going on at the same time is that after the battle, from the last book, Aaron actually wasn't killed. His essence, his consciousness is actually living inside Cal's head alongside Cal. So it's kind of like 2 of them are sharing his brain space. So they have a plan to not only defeat Alex, but get Aaron a new body. Sounds ambitious. Will it work? Gotta read. Great book, great series. I was so amazed by how good this thing was. I knew when I saw the cover of the first book, I was like, this is for me. It's funny when you see a book and you just know, right? Next one, another one I read poolside, although this time not in the warm swimming waters. It was in the cold September, October nights when I was barbecuing, but Cujo. Curtis Joseph was a goalie that retired not all that long ago. He's maybe been out for 5, 6, 7 years, maybe a decade. It's not long, but he wasn't even drafted. He came on with the St. Louis Blues in the late 80s, early 90s, and he was a goalie that I remember greatly. I remember collecting his hockey cards when I was young, and those beautiful Heaton pads in the blue, yellow, and white. And he made an impression on me right away because the Leafs played him, his team St. Louis, in the second round of the '93 playoffs, and he was amazing. And then after that, he went to Edmonton briefly, and then came to Toronto for 4 or 5 years, where those teams had a couple of really deep runs and almost got to the Cup finals on a couple of seasons. So he's a beloved former Maple Leaf. And then after the Leafs, he moved on to Detroit, Phoenix, Calgary, before coming back to the Leafs for one last season in a backup role. This book talks about all the hockey, and it's great. It's just like the Doug Gilmour book that I talked about earlier in the summer. You hear all the stories, and it's so funny, and you recognize all the names. Like, there wasn't one hockey name of coaches and players in this book that I didn't recognize, because that was my era of growing up, so I knew all these guys. And it's so funny to hear what goes on behind the scenes, and interesting to find out why Cujo decided to leave Toronto for Detroit, and how he felt about it in the end, and all those things that factor into what made his career his career. The most amazing thing about the book, though, is how he grew up. When I look back on his hockey cards when I was young, I was like, oh, he's from Richmond Hill, so fancy area. But his upbringing was anything but normal. His young parents gave him up for adoption and didn't really go through the whole process. They were kind of strong-armed into giving him to a nurse that worked at the same place as his mom, and then she was anything but loving. Like, he grew up in the not great conditions. She got hooked on drugs eventually, and she helped run a group home for mentally deficient adults, some of which were dangerous, right? So this was his kind of everyday growing up in these environments and stuff. So, but somehow he found the means to play hockey, and he ended up being a really good goalie, going to the University of Wisconsin to play hockey there, and then signed as a free agent after his college career with the St. Louis Blues, and that's how his career took off. So I knew all the hockey stuff, or knew enough about his hockey stuff, but when I read about how he grew up and stuff, I was blown away. Like, you never would have had any idea. So you can't judge a book by its cover, right? Anyways, that was amazing. I highly recommend that for anybody who just likes an interesting person story. It's great, but if you like hockey too, it's a double whammy, right? So, great book. Last book of the sesh, Venom, Lethal Protector. This is another adaptation from a graphic novel in the Marvel Universe that they're adding to their ever-growing book series. In this story, Spider-Man and Venom have come to kind of like a ceasefire. They're kind of going to leave each other alone. Venom's given up on his vendetta of killing Spider-Man, and he decides to head back out to the West Coast in San Francisco, where he has roots. When he gets there, he goes about dispatching criminals, thugs, rapists, murderers, all that stuff. And he's not like Spider-Man, who webs them up and lets the cops take him to jail. He kills them, which, hey, saves tax money and sending these assholes to jail, right? But I agree with his methods. But that's another story. So he goes out there, and then Spider-Man hears about these murders, and he's like, oh, Venom, he's gone back to his old ways. I got to go out and see what's going on and deal with this. And in the meantime, while Venom's doing all this, he defends a bunch of homeless people in a park against a bunch of thugs that are trying to beat them down and get them out of the park. And as this fight rages on, it goes underground as these people kind of decide to take Venom to their sanctuary and decide if this council that rules them, I guess, is going to let him stay with them. And he's like, great, I need a home. I'm tired of living life on the lam, and cops recognize me and chasing me. So they go underground, and but before long, these two diggers show up, these digging machines, and are going after these homeless people again. And so Venom takes them down, and during the fight, they fall through the floor into this kind of like old, ruined city that looks like it's a century in the past. And this is where these homeless people live. It's their true home underground in this old city. And they, after the defeat of the diggers, they take Venom to the council, and they vote to see if he could leave or stay. They decide to kick him out. They think he's too dangerous. So he leaves, and as he leaves, he decides, well, I got to find out what's going on with these people and these digging machines and these thugs that were trying to beat them down. And so it all leads to this guy named Roland Treese, who's like a rich billionaire developer, businessman sort of thing. And he's kind of got this three-headed monster. He's after something underground that these homeless people are sitting on top of. He's also working with General Orwell Taylor, who wants Eddie Brock's ass because he killed his son when Venom escaped, did a prison break a while back. And then the other guy is Carlton Drake, the CEO of the Life Foundation, who wants more experimentation and development on the symbiote that makes Eddie Brock Venom. And so you got these three guys working together to bring about Venom's demise, so he's got to finagle around that and try and defeat them and find out exactly what their plan is. And in the meantime, Spider-Man's heading to the West Coast, so then you got him entering the fray and causing Venom headaches there as well. But when Venom explains the situation, he might have an ally with Spider-Man rather than an enemy. So that's kind of the story behind that. It was a great book, fast-paced, lots of action. Love the Venom character. I love those guys that are like heroes, but are like, there's so much gray area with them. Like, it's like they kill, well, here's a bad guy, I'll kill him. Why am I going to leave him alive? I'm going to kill him. It's like Deadpool and Venom and guys like that. I love those kind of guys. They're heroes, but they're, and Punisher and stuff like that. Guys that just don't take any shit and do it the right way. So that's a great book. Next up, still in the realm of superheroes, I finally got around to watching Into the SpiderVerse, which was a fantastic movie. My favorite part of it was the animation that it was done in. The style was just so crazy and different, like nothing I'd seen before. But as for the story, there's a young kid in New York City named Miles Morales, and he is the son of a cop who's like a very by-the-books law boy kind of guy, and he hates Spider-Man for his vigilante ways. And Miles is kind of at odds with his father because he's like a kid that he's a real artisty, that's not even a word, real artistic kind of kid who loves to spray paint and tag stuff and put stickers all over the city, and he's got that kind of creative outlet in him. And so his parents decide to send him to a private school to get him the best education possible, but he misses his friends at school. He hates staying at the school and being away from home. And so one night he sneaks out of his dorm and goes to visit his Uncle Aaron, his dad's brother, who leads a much less by the law kind of lifestyle. Not that he's a criminal, but he's more normal, right? So as he goes there, he can tell something's wrong with Miles. So he takes him to this underground area where Miles can just spray paint all he wants. And so he does this little project, And after he's done painting, he gets bitten by a spider. Shrugs it off as nothing unusual. Goes back to the dorm that night. Wakes up in the morning. He's sweating. He's feeling weird. All of a sudden, his hands are all sticky. He sticks to everything, which causes some confusion at school when he's trying to talk up a girl. And so he starts freaking out. And so later that night, he decides to return to the scene of the crime where he got bit by the spider. And as he's there, he witnesses a fight between Spider-Man and Green Goblin that's raging beneath the streets. And he just tries to survive and get out of there, but he gets caught up in it, and it rages, and they burst through into this chamber that has this huge super collider in it. Kingpin's at the controls. He's up to something. And from there, we learn that Kingpin's trying to access multiple or alternate dimensions and stuff like that for whatever reason. And Spider-Man is defeated, and he gives Miles a USB that says, this is the only thing capable of destroying the super collider. You got to load it in there and destroy this thing. But before Miles can do it, Kingpin delivers a killing blow to Spider-Man, and then they chase Miles away. And the next day, like, the city is in shock that Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is dead. And it's really somber. Like, it kind of, like, I was like, oh God, this is crazy. It's amazing how a cartoon based around a fictional character can stir such emotions, but they really did a good job with it. And so then after that, Miles is like, you know what? I got to finish Spider-Man's job. I'm the new Spider-Man. I'm going to do this for him and for the safety of all. And then as he's going about trying to figure out who he is now, a new Peter Parker enters the scene, a more depressed and out of shape one. And he's like, what? So then they eventually decide to work together. Peter decides to train Miles, and they go visit the original Peters from this same dimensions, Aunt May. And she shows them that she's been harboring all these other spider people from alternate dimensions in a facility beneath her home. And all these alternate Spider-Men, spider people, spider pigs, whatever, are from alternate dimensions. And if they stay too long in this dimension, they start to glitch out. They're going to start to fade and disintegrate, sort of thing. So they've got to go take the fight to Kingpin, get everybody back to their own dimension, and then destroy the super collider. And that's kind of how the rest of this story plays out. And there's some surprises along the way, and lots of great action, and of course the animation's fantastic. So really cool movie. I hope they do more animated stuff in the Marvel universe, because I love animation and the artistry behind it, you know. So it'd be great to see more stuff like that, and some cool characters too. I'd love to see a Deadpool cartoon. That would be filthy. Next up, finished watching the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs TV series. This was a cartoon from 1993. In Canada, it's a Canadian show, so in Canada it played on YTV during the afternoon programming block that contained all these weird cartoons that were so good, like Bucky O'Hare, Botsmaster, Toxic Avengers, or whatever they were, like so much cool stuff. And it's a very short series. I had to buy it on bootleg, that's why it looks weird. But it's only 13 episodes, and the story is that it's the 26th century. Nature has spun wildly out of control. The dinosaurs are back. Nature's reclaiming the lands. So what's left of humanity is trying to survive in these small cities and outposts, and they're scrounging for resources and stuff like that. There's a man named Jack Tenrack who is one of the last of the original mechanics, I guess they call them, or something like that. And he has a fleet of cars, and his most beloved ones are his Cadillacs. And he's also very much into nature. He believes the balance has been put back to this for a reason, and he doesn't want anybody messing with the dinosaurs and their relation to humans. So he's kind of an environmentalist and a protectionist. And so he studies the dinosaurs and their behaviors, so he becomes an expert on that. So the city in the sea is kind of where he's located nearby, and that is where the ruling council of governors operates out of, which is a three-person council that kind of makes all the decisions. And one of the people on the council, Scharnhorst, she is just out for herself, out for money, out for glory, out for progress's sake. And she's always doing things to throw that balance of nature off and endanger not only the dinosaurs, but a lot of times the citizens, you know. So he's always going up against her. And there's the Terhune brothers, led by Hammer, who are kind of like poachers and thugs, and they often align with Scharnhorst, and so he's got to deal with them as well. And he's got a couple of allies. He's got a dinosaur that he raised from a baby named, oh God, I forget its name. It's a cool name, Hermes. And then his friend Mustafa, who is very much has the same ideals as Jack and helps him out. The other person that helps him out is a diplomat from the Wassoon region called Hannah Dundee, who is coming to the City in the Sea to make relations with them. And so she gets caught up in Jack's cause too, and they become friends and maybe more eventually. Who knows? But the animation, the sound on this series is just unbelievable, and the story is just so cool, and the way they pull it off, and the terminology, and it's a fantastic cartoon, and it's only 13 episodes long, so it's not a big investment to watch it. Anybody who likes cartoons, especially from the 90s and 80s era, like this will be right up your alley. It's fantastic. Next up, Volume 1 of Power Rangers in Space. This was the 6th Power Rangers season and the 5th kind of incarnation of the Rangers, and was from 1998. It leads in right from Power Rangers Turbo, which is the season before it, and as that ended off, Rangers TJ, Ashley, Carlos, and Cassie were blasting into space because Zordon had been captured, and they wanted to go and find him. And so they blast into space. They're searching for Zordon. They get kind of invaded by this guy who looks like a Power Ranger. He's wearing red. He's in a Power Rangers uniform, and but they think he's a spy. They think he's out to do them ill will. But eventually they find out he's not. He's actually an alien from the planet KO-35, although he's humanoid, and he's a Power Ranger himself. So they eventually begin to trust each other, become friends, and they form this new team of Power Rangers, led by this Red Ranger whose name is Andros. And so he agrees to help them search for Zordon, and he's tormented by the kidnapping of his sister from years ago, and that's kind of been his mission lately. So, and they agree to help him. So it's kind of a mutual thing, and they're helping each other out. And so as the series goes on, there's some new characters introduced right away. Divatox is called away to help deal with the Zordon situation. So the new enemy in the mix is another femme fatale named Astronema, and she's a little more ruthless than Divatox, but still can't get one over on the Rangers. They defeat her enemies that she brings in with her various schemes to defeat the Rangers, and that's kind of the way it goes the whole season. It's a typical Power Rangers season. There's a couple of sidekicks of hers that are regular enemies, Ecliptor and Darkonda, and they provide some new interesting enemy interactions with the Rangers and some help flesh out some cool plot lines. And then there's also a bunch of guest appearances and stuff like that. My favorite is the Ninja Turtles actually appeared in an episode as a crossover and help out the Rangers, because at the same time this was originally made, the Ninja Turtles had a live action series called The Next Mutation going on, so it was kind of a crossover, and that was really neat. I was not expecting that at all, so that was awesome. And then Justin comes back for an episode and helps the Rangers alongside Storm Chaser. The Phantom Ranger makes one more appearance, and a bunch of other stuff too. So, but this is a 3-disc collection that includes the first 22 episodes of that 6th season, and then Volume 2 contains the rest, which I'm starting to work on now. So another great... Power Rangers is so consistent, and they just have this formula that works, and it's like, why mess with it? I wish more people would have that attitude, right? Last thing, a video game we recently finished was a free PS4 download from a couple months ago, maybe. It's called Horizon Chase Turbo. It's a new racing game that is retro in feel, and I think it must be made by the same people that made the original Top Gear games for Super Nintendo back in the day, because the visual presentation of it is exactly the same. It's kind of, you're staring at the horizon, and the roads come at you really fast, and you have to really be paying attention because the turns are really sharp and they come really fast. You can't see the road ahead of you all that great, and you as you make your way through each circuit, you unlock cars, you can unlock upgrades and stuff like that, and it's just the music is fantastic. The original Top Gear song is in it, which is another thing pointing towards the fact that it was probably the same developers that made this game. And it's just an amazingly fun, retro-fueled racing game that you can play races really quick. They're fast. They're not easy. They're easy at the start, but they're not at the end. But it's an easy game to play. in a fun game to play. You never resent playing it and spending some time on it and not getting anywhere and going, well, that was a waste. It's just fun all the time, just like the original Top Gear games were. And I almost completed the whole thing. I was on the last endurance, the long endurance mode, and then our PS4 cut out, and when it went to repair all of our data, all the Horizon Chase Turbo save data was lost. So all of our cars are gone, all of our victories are gone. So I was just like, nope, I can't do it again. So my journey on that game is finished. I almost had the whole thing completely done, but yeah, there we have it. That's life in this digital age, I guess. So yeah, that's everything for now. That was a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to have a bunch of stuff more soon, I probably assume. I will try to remember to get on earlier and not make the videos so long by having so much stuff. But my life's a mess, so I can't guarantee anything. So long. Have a great weekend.